So I'm often asked, how is it that charter schools are structurally underfunded in comparison to traditional schools? There are really 4 ways that this comes about. The first is at a very systematic and per pupil way, where most researchers verify that there's about a 5 to 10% discrepancy between charter school funding and traditional school funding. That's just a starting point. From there, charter schools are not receiving their facilities in the same way that traditional schools are. And so many charter schools are having to pay 5 to 10, sometimes as much as 15% of their operating revenue simply to pay for their leases and for their facilities debt. Then things get even worse when you consider the funding crisis in the state of California. The state, in order to get through its challenge, is deferring payments to all public schools from one fiscal year into the other. If you're a traditional public school, you're able to borrow money at perhaps 1 to 2% rates, but a charter school is systematically excluded from those same borrowing options, meaning that we're having to borrow money at 15 to 20% rates. Can you imagine, on top of the cuts that we've had, having to put a fifth of your revenue to get through a short-term borrowing challenge of this kind? Finally, the state has decided during the middle of the financial crisis to protect declining enrollment districts. That has led, though, to a structural underfunding of growing enrollment entities, such as charter schools. So the state of California is structurally underfunding the very entities that are creating the innovations that are so desperately needed for all public schools in the state of California. That's why it's so important that we have your support, not just because these solutions will help charter schools, but because ultimately these things would help all schools and all kids in the state of California.